What is the best lens for landscape photography? This is probably the second most asked question I get on this channel, so today we're going to answer that. And in my opinion, it's the 24-70. I personally use the one by Canon, and this is the 2.8 version. The things that I like about it, we'll do this briefly and then go into more detail after. And that is the focal length. It's not too wide and it's also not too zoomed in. It's sort of that sweet spot in the middle. So it's a bit of a Goldilocks lens, and 9 times out of 10, it's just right. The quality is also really good all throughout the range. It's like tack sharp from 24-70, and I've not noticed any like drop-offs. And another thing I like about it is the focusing is really easy. It has got autofocus, but the manual focus is really easy to use. It's really smooth, and you can see how far away the subject is on the top here. So that comes in handy for astrophotography and just landscape photography in general. That's most of the good things about it. The main downside is the cost. It's really expensive. I think it's about $1,500. So it's a big commitment to get it, but depending on what you want to do with photography, it might be worth taking that extra step. But we'll go into all these things in more detail now, and I'll say what I like and don't like about it. Let's start with the focal range first. With my style of photography, what I like to do is basically climb up to the top of the hill, get that big vista, and then I tend to start looking for more details in that scene. So 24 is really good for that first shot. You can get a lot of detail into that first photo with like looking down into the valley, or say if you come into the woods, you can get the track and get a lot of space around it. A lot of the time with landscape photography, it's good to get some empty space to highlight the subject. So say another woodland example is, there was a lone tree that I really liked. You could go to 24mm, get the tree in the bottom corner, and then have a lot of empty space around it, and it worked really well. If you're not wanting to do any really wide shots, you can zoom in, and I tend to do this a lot for sort of picking out details in the scene. So a few weeks ago we were out in France, and at the top of the mountain I used the wide side of the lens to get a big shot down into the valley, and then I looked down to the left and there was a ridge, and at about 50-70mm you could highlight that ridge, and you got a totally different shot without changing lenses. And that's a big deal if you're out in bad conditions. When we were out skiing, we had snow some days it was really windy and snow was blowing around. Some days it was -11 and you couldn't feel your fingers. And a lot of the time out in the lakes it's raining, and sometimes it's not worth worrying about if water or any dust or anything is going to get inside the camera. So if you can do it all with a twist of your fingers, I think that makes it more likely to get more photos. If you have to change lenses in between, then it's possible that you're just going to not bother, at least in my opinion. I can't afford to ruin a camera. There is the odd occasion where I wish I had a wider lens than this, but because there's not much distortion using this, I tend to just flick this over into a portrait, then do a quick panorama, then you can stitch it together, and that's a quicker workaround, and I don't need to carry an extra wide angle lens or buy a super wide angle lens. At the telephoto end, there's not really too much you can do. You can crop in, I guess, but I tend to carry an extra zoom lens for those situations. But 9 times out of 10, this covers it. The next thing is it's really easy to manual focus. It has got autofocus as well, but on some occasions, say astrophotography, you'll find this bit really helpful. So you can find infinity really quickly, just like that. All you need to do is line up the marks. So I do a lot of manual focus with landscapes as well. I tend to put it into live view and then just fine tune it, and I've had no problems with that. It's really smooth. and really easy to use. The next little thing that I like about it is this one comes with a little lens hood. This is good for blocking out some of the sun from coming in the side. Also stops the rain from coming in from the top a little bit. It's not as good for protecting the rain as, say, on a zoom lens, but if this stuck out any further, you'd see it in the top of the picture. So for the little bit of effort to just screw that on the front, that makes a big difference. The next thing is the thread size. This is 82mm, so it's pretty easy to get filters for it, and they're not stupidly expensive. With some of the super wide lenses, they've got more of a bulbous front element, and it's really hard to get filters for, or you just can't get filters for them. Maybe that's not true. Maybe you can get filters, but it's just expensive and awkward. So this fits into my Lee system, and it just works. I think it's the practicality of this that I really like. It's just sort of a one-size-fits-all solution for most problems. The biggest downside to it though is the price, and there is sort of ways around this. There is a f4 version which also has IS, which is about half the price, but it's going to depend on what you're wanting to do. If, say, you want to do more astrophotography and the 2.8 is a big deal to you, then maybe it's worth the investment. Or I had this because I was doing weddings, and if you're in low lit situations and you're hand holding the lens, then that 2.8 makes a big difference, say in a church or at a night do, or even in woods like this. It's pretty dark in here, and if you're not wanting to use a tripod, that extra stop of light makes a big difference. One thing that I forgot to mention before is the f2.8. That's good for getting a shallow depth of field if you want to. The reason I forgot before is I don't really find it that relevant to landscape photography. It was really useful for the weddings and the events for getting a shallow depth of field. Like you can make the subject stand out from the background, but it means that the background is out of focus or bokeh or whatever you want to call it, and I'm not a big fan of that, and I can't imagine me climbing a mountain and then wanting to get one bit in focus and the rest of it out of focus. I want to get it all in focus. So there is the option to isolate subjects if you want to, but it doesn't really suit my style. But it's nice to know that the option is there for doing portraits and that kind of thing. Another thing that I like about this is the weather sealing. I go out in all conditions and it's been covered in rain, dust, snow. It's taken a few falls, only small ones, just like off the camera bag, and it survived all of those. And yeah, all I do is when I get home, I take off the lens cap, put it on my desk, and just let it dry out properly. When I first get in, I clean it off and dry off any water, and I've had no problems with it yet, touch wood. So it can take a bit of a beating. I do look after my gear, but at the same time I don't baby it. If there's a photo that I want to get, I'm just going to go and get it, and then occasionally I will put like a lens coat over the whole camera if it's really bad, but most of the time it survives on its own. So that's another nice thing to have in the back of your head, is that you're probably not going to ruin the camera. I think that pretty much covers it though. This is my go-to lens for most situations. It's always in my camera bag, and it's always the first lens to be on the camera. It pretty much just lives on here, and then for the odd occasion where I need a telephoto lens, I just swap over. But if you're looking to take that next step and improve the quality of your images by changing lenses, then I could definitely recommend this. I'll leave a link to the one that I've got down in the comments. I can't imagine not using this though. This is probably my favourite bit of camera equipment, and I think my style reflects from having this lens. But I hope you found this helpful. If you want more guides, please comment down below. I've been doing quite a few rainy day reviews lately, so yeah, I'm happy to carry them on if you want them. But please subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos, and I'll see you in the next one.